The rescue. The vastness of space stretched endlessly, a cold and silent battlefield. Wreckage floated aimlessly, burnt-out ships, shattered metal, and debris from a brutal fight. The aftermath of war was always the same: destruction and death. A massive warship, dark and sleek, moved carefully through the wreckage. This was the Exile, the command ship of Captain Vyra, one of the most feared warriors in the Zyraxian Empire. She sat in her captain's chair, her sharp golden eyes scanning the battlefield. Her crew worked in silence, checking the area for survivors. It was standard protocol. No enemy was to be left alive. "Captain, scanners detect a life form," the crew member reported. Vyra frowned. A survivor? That was unusual. Most beings couldn't last long in open space, even with emergency suits. "Identify," she commanded. The screen flickered, and the image of a drifting figure appeared. It was not Zyraxian, not one of their kind. The creature was human. Vyra's interest sharpened. Humans were rare in this part of space. Their kind was weaker compared to many alien species, yet they were known for their stubborn survival instincts. This one, however, was unconscious, floating helplessly in the void. Her second-in-command, Commander Zark, stepped forward. "A human, Captain. Should we eliminate it?" Vyra did not answer immediately. She studied the figure. The male was wrapped in a damaged survival suit, its oxygen levels dangerously low. He had mere minutes before he suffocated. "Bring him aboard," she ordered. The crew hesitated. Zyraxians did not waste time saving weak creatures. But no one dared to question their captain. Within moments, the retrieval team activated the tractor beam, pulling the human onto the ship. The unknown captive. Ethan gasped awake, his lungs burning for air. He coughed violently, his body shaking as he tried to understand where he was. The last thing he remembered was his ship being attacked. Fire, alarms blaring, and then darkness. Now he was inside a strange metallic room, lying on a medical bed. The walls pulsed with dim blue lights, and the air smelled sterile and unfamiliar. Then he saw them. Aliens. Tall, powerful-looking creatures with dark armor and sharp, intelligent eyes. They surrounded him, watching like scientists observing a fragile specimen. One of them stepped forward. A female. Captain Vyra. She was different from the others. Her posture radiated authority, her deep blue skin glowing under the artificial lights. Her golden eyes locked onto his, and Ethan felt like prey caught in a hunter's gaze. "You are awake," she said. Her voice was smooth but carried a dangerous edge. Ethan's throat was dry, his mind racing. He was alive, but at what cost? Who were these aliens? What did they want? "Where am I?" he croaked. Vyra tilted her head. "You are aboard my ship. I saved you." Saved him. Ethan wasn't sure if that was good or bad. He had no idea what Zyraxians did with prisoners. "Why?" he asked cautiously. Vyra's lips curled slightly, not quite a smile. "Because in my culture, to save a life is to claim it." Ethan's heart pounded. Claim it. The crew's disapproval. The moment Vyra left the medical bay, she could feel the tension in the air. Her crew did not agree with her decision. Commander Zark stepped beside her, his expression hard. "Captain, this is a mistake." Vyra raised an eyebrow. "Is it?" "He is human," Zark hissed, "a species known for their unpredictability. Weak in body, stubborn in mind. What use could he possibly have to us?" Vyra considered his words. True, humans were not as strong as Zyraxians, nor did they possess advanced technology. But she had studied their history. Humans had survived countless wars, adapted to impossible conditions, and defied stronger enemies. This one, Ethan, had survived a battle that wiped out an entire fleet. That was not weakness. That was resilience. "He belongs to me now," Vyra said simply. "That is our way." Zark's jaw clenched, but he said nothing more. Orders were orders. The human's realization. Ethan sat up slowly, his muscles sore but functional. His mind was still spinning from Vira's words. To save a life is to claim it. What did that mean? Did he owe her something? Was he her prisoner? The door slid open, and Vira entered once more. This time, she stood closer. Ethan tensed but held her gaze. "You are under my protection now," she said. "You will not be harmed." Ethan exhaled, feeling slightly relieved, until she spoke again. "But in return, you belong to me." His stomach twisted. What does that mean? Vira's golden eyes gleamed. "You will learn soon enough." Ethan swallowed hard. He wasn't sure what scared him more, being alone in the void of space, or being owned by an alien captain. The human problem. Ethan sat on the cold metal floor of his quarters, if they could even be called that. The room was small, sterile, and devoid of anything personal. The walls hummed with the faint energy of the ship's systems, and a single dim light flickered overhead. He had been given a thin sleeping pad, a metal table, and nothing else. It felt more like a prison cell than a guest room. His mind was still racing, trying to make sense of his situation. "You belong to me." Vira's words echoed in his head. What the hell did that even mean? Was he a slave? A servant? Some kind of war trophy? He had so many questions, but no answers. His only comfort was the fact that he was still alive. He had seen enough war to know that survivors were rarely treated well by enemy forces. If he had been captured by pirates, slavers, or worse, he would have been dead or wishing for death. But Vira, she hadn't hurt him. She had saved him. That was the most confusing part. Just then, the door hissed open, and Ethan immediately stood up, his instincts on high alert. A Zyraxian officer stepped inside, his deep green armor polished and gleaming. The alien was taller than Ethan, broad-shouldered, with sharp ridges along his arms that looked more like natural weapons than decorations. "Captain Vira has summoned you," the officer said coldly. His voice carried an air of disdain, as if speaking to Ethan was beneath him. Ethan didn't like the tone, but he wasn't in a position to argue. "Fine," he muttered and followed the officer out. The captain's orders. The hallways of the Exile were massive, designed for creatures much taller and stronger than humans. The walls pulsed with blue energy, shifting like a living organism. The air smelled slightly metallic, a mix of ozone and something unfamiliar. Ethan could feel the stares of the crew as he walked. Mistrust, disgust, curiosity. Clearly, humans weren't welcome here. When they reached the command bridge, Ethan stepped inside cautiously. The room was a massive chamber, surrounded by transparent walls showing the endless darkness of space. Dozens of Zyraxian officers stood at their stations, monitoring screens filled with alien symbols. At the center of it all, standing tall and powerful, was Captain Vira. She turned to face him, her golden eyes unreadable. "Ethan," she said smoothly, as if testing the sound of his name. "I have a task for you." Ethan crossed his arms. "A task?" Vira ignored his attitude. "You will assist our crew with ship maintenance. You have been trained in human engineering, correct?" Ethan hesitated. He wasn't exactly an engineer, but he had enough technical knowledge to understand ship systems. His old job back on Earth had required him to run repairs under pressure. Nothing fancy, but enough to get things working. "Yeah," he admitted. "I know a few things." Vira nodded. "Good. Then you will prove yourself useful." Ethan glanced around, noticing how several officers were watching him closely. Their expressions were far from welcoming. "And if I refuse?" he asked. Vira's expression remained calm, but there was a dangerous edge to her voice. "Then you will remain confined to your quarters like a caged animal." Ethan exhaled. He hated being forced into anything, but at least this was better than rotting in a cell. "Fine," he said. "I'll help." The crew's hatred. Ethan was assigned to work under Chief Engineer Tarek, a gruff Zyraxian officer who clearly hated his presence. Tarek made it very clear that humans were inferior creatures who had no place on a Zyraxian warship. Every command he gave Ethan was deliberately condescending, treating him as if he were too weak or too stupid to understand basic mechanics. At first, Ethan ignored it. He was used to working under bad bosses. But as the days passed, it became clear that the crew was actively trying to make him fail. They gave him the hardest tasks, sent him to work in the most dangerous parts of the ship, and never warned him about the risks. One time, they sent him to repair a power conduit without telling him that it was still active. The energy surge nearly fried him alive. Ethan gritted his teeth and endured it. He wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing him break. He worked harder, faster, smarter, learning their systems and adapting as best he could. Slowly, he started to understand how the Zyraxian technology functioned. It was different from human systems, but not impossible to figure out. And then, one night, everything changed. The attack. An alarm blared through the ship. Ethan had just finished a long shift in the lower decks when the emergency sirens screamed through the corridors. An enemy vessel had locked onto them. The crew rushed to battle stations as Vira's voice echoed through the ship. All units prepare for engagement. Shields at full capacity. Do not let them board. Ethan didn't need to be told twice. He ran toward the nearest control station, trying to get an idea of what was happening. On the screens, he saw a fleet of pirate ships surrounding them. "Damn it," he muttered. This wasn't just an attack. This was a trap. A moment later, a loud explosion rocked the ship. Ethan was thrown against the wall, pain flaring through his ribs. Sparks rained down as the Zyraxian officers barked orders in their native tongue. Through the chaos, Ethan spotted a control panel flickering wildly, a power failure in the weapons system. If they didn't fix it fast, the ship would be defenseless. Without thinking, Ethan ran toward it. His hands flew over the controls, bypassing security codes and rerouting power. The alien systems were different, but logic was universal. He worked faster than he ever had in his life. And just as the pirates prepared to fire the final shot, Ethan reactivated the weapons system. The Exile fired back. A barrage of energy cannons tore through the enemy fleet, sending pirate ships exploding into the void. The battle ended in seconds. The Zyraxians had won. And when the dust settled, Ethan turned to see Captain Vira staring at him. Her golden eyes gleamed with something new. Approval. "Not bad, human," she murmured. For the first time, the crew did not look at Ethan with hatred. They looked at him with respect. The bond begins. Ethan had been on the Exile for almost 2 weeks now, and things were changing. At first, the crew had treated him like a nuisance, a weak outsider, barely worth their attention. But after he saved the ship from the pirate attack, something shifted. They still didn't like him, but they no longer saw him as useless. Respect was earned in battle, and Ethan had proved that he wasn't just dead weight. Yet, even as things improved slightly, one truth remained. He was still under Captain Vira's command. And now, he had to figure out what that really meant. A lesson in power. Vira summoned Ethan to the training hall, a massive chamber deep within the ship. The walls were lined with weapons, some traditional, others made of advanced alien technology. The floor had battle scars from countless sparring matches. Ethan wasn't sure why he was here. He wasn't a soldier. Vira stood in the center, her tall, powerful form radiating control. She wore sleek battle armor designed for speed and agility. Her golden eyes studied him with calculating curiosity. "You fought well during the pirate attack," she said, "but survival is not enough." Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" Vira gestured toward the weapons lining the walls. "If you remain on this ship, you will learn how to defend yourself. You will fight. You will train." Ethan crossed his arms. "What if I don't want to?" Vira stepped closer, towering over him. "Then you will die the next time someone comes to kill you." The words sent a chill down his spine. She wasn't wrong. This wasn't Earth. There were no laws here, no safety nets. If he wanted to survive, he had to be strong. Ethan sighed. Fine, but don't expect me to be a warrior overnight. Vira smirked. No one expects that. But you will learn. Or you will suffer. Ethan had a feeling this training wasn't going to be easy. The first fight. Vira started by teaching him Cyraxian combat basics, not just how to fight, but how to think like a warrior. Unlike humans, the Cyraxians didn't rely on brute strength alone. Their battle techniques were based on precision, speed, and psychological warfare. Ethan's first opponent was Commander Zark, the officer who had hated him since day one. Zark grinned as he stepped onto the training mat. This will be quick. Ethan swallowed hard. He wasn't a complete pushover. He had been in bar fights, scuffles in back alleys. But this was different. Zark moved like lightning. Before Ethan could react, the Cyraxian's fist slammed into his gut, knocking the wind out of him. Ethan stumbled back, gasping. The crew watching from the sidelines laughed. Zark didn't even wait. He came at him again, faster, harder. Ethan dodged, barely. But he knew one thing. He couldn't win with strength. He had to think. He had to adapt. Zark swung again, but this time, Ethan sidestepped at the last second. He reached out, grabbed Zark's wrist, and used his own momentum against him. The Cyraxian stumbled forward, caught off guard. Ethan didn't hesitate. He dropped low, sweeping Zark's legs out from under him. The mighty warrior hit the ground with a loud thud. The room fell dead silent. Zark's face twisted in fury, but before he could get up, Vira raised her hand. Enough, she said. Her golden eyes met Ethan's. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, Vira nodded. Ethan exhaled. He had passed his first test. The jealousy of the crew. Ethan's victory over Zark didn't sit well with the other Cyraxians. Some of them resented him even more now. He was an outsider, a human, and yet the captain had taken an interest in him. In their culture, that meant something. Rumors started to spread. Why does the captain favor the human? He is weak. He does not deserve her attention. Perhaps she has claimed him for more than just protection. Ethan didn't understand their customs, but he could feel the tension building. He wasn't just earning respect. He was making enemies. The captain's confession. Later that night, Vira called him to her private chambers. Ethan had never been inside before. The room was dimly lit, elegant in a way he didn't expect. The walls were lined with ancient Cyraxian artifacts, weapons, and scrolls filled with unknown writings. Vira stood by the window, gazing at the stars. Ethan hesitated. You wanted to see me. Vira turned, her expression unreadable. You have done well. Ethan smirked. Glad you noticed. Her lips twitched in amusement. But then she grew serious. There is something you must understand, Ethan. He frowned. What? Vira stepped closer. In my culture, when a warrior claims a life, it is a sacred bond. You are under my protection, but that also means you are mine. Ethan felt his heart skip a beat. What does that even mean? Vira studied him carefully. It means I am responsible for you. It means I will fight for you. Her voice grew softer. And it means you will fight for me. Ethan wasn't sure what to say. Was this just a warrior's oath, or was there something more? Before he could ask, Vira turned back toward the window. Rest, human. We have much to discuss tomorrow. Ethan left the room with 1,000 questions. One thing was clear. He wasn't just a guest anymore. He was part of something much bigger. The betrayal. Ethan had begun to find his rhythm on the Exile. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was learning, adapting. The crew still didn't accept him fully, but they had stopped treating him like a fragile outsider. He could feel the shift. Some warriors respected him, others resented him, and a few were watching him too closely. But nothing had prepared him for the message that changed everything. The human colony's distress signal. Ethan was in the lower decks, working on a malfunctioning power core when the alarms blared. The emergency signal wasn't Cyraxian. It was human. He froze. A human distress signal. Out here? He rushed toward the command center, his heart pounding. The moment he stepped onto the bridge, every eye was on him. Vira stood in the center, watching the flickering holographic display. The transmission was weak, but the words were clear enough to send chills down Ethan's spine. Under attack. Colony in danger. Need help. Please, any vessel. Ethan clenched his fists. He didn't recognize the voice, but that didn't matter. It was a human colony, and they were in trouble. He turned to Vira. We have to go. She didn't answer. Her golden eyes studied the screen, unreadable as always. The silence stretched. Finally, she spoke. No. Ethan felt like he had been punched in the gut. What do you mean no? His voice rose. They're under attack. We're close. We can help. Vira's tone remained calm but firm. Interfering in human affairs is not our mission. Ethan couldn't believe what he was hearing. You saved my life. But now you're just going to let them die. Vira's gaze hardened. Saving you was a personal choice. A debt. This is war. Ethan took a step forward, his anger boiling over. So you're just going to sit here while innocent people get slaughtered? Vira's jaw tightened. I will not risk my crew for a species that is not my own. Ethan felt his blood turn cold. It wasn't just her words. It was the way the crew nodded in agreement. The way they didn't care. To them, human lives meant nothing. He had thought, hoped, that Vira was different. But now, he wasn't so sure. The escape. Ethan couldn't just stand by and do nothing. He wasn't a soldier, but he was still human. And if there were people out there who needed help, he couldn't abandon them. There was only one choice left. He had to leave. Late that night, when most of the crew was asleep, Ethan made his move. He snuck through the corridors, heart pounding, sweat dripping from his brow. He had studied the ship's layout enough to know where the smaller transport shuttles were docked. He reached the hangar bay without raising suspicion. But as he climbed into the cockpit of a shuttle, a voice cut through the silence. You are making a mistake. Ethan froze. Vira stood at the entrance of the hangar, her golden eyes glowing in the dim light. She had known. Of course, she had known. Ethan gritted his teeth. I can't just let them die. Vira took a step forward. If you leave, you will not be welcome back. Ethan hesitated. He had nowhere else to go. If he left, he would be alone. No allies, no safety. But if he stayed, he would never forgive himself. He exhaled sharply. Then I guess this is goodbye. For the first time, Vira looked almost conflicted. But she didn't stop him. She just watched as Ethan fired up the engines and disappeared into the void. Captured. The human distress signal had come from a barren moon, orbiting a dying star. Ethan landed cautiously, his pulse racing. He expected to see wreckage, survivors, anything. Instead, nothing. The entire colony was gone. The buildings were burnt-out husks. There were no bodies, no signs of life. Just silence. Something was wrong. Then, pain. A surge of electricity tore through his body. Ethan barely had time to register the attack before his vision went dark. The slaver's prison. When he woke up, Ethan was somewhere else. A damp, metallic prison cell. His wrists were bound in energy restraints, and the air was thick with the smell of sweat, fear, and rot. Through the bars, he could see other prisoners, humans, aliens, all of them beaten and exhausted. Slavers. His stomach twisted. He had walked straight into a trap. A deep voice rumbled from the shadows. You're awake. Ethan turned sharply, coming face to face with a hulking figure with cybernetic implants. The slaver's grin was cruel. You thought you were rescuing someone. The alien chuckled. No, human. We sent that distress signal to lure in fools like you. And now, Your cargo. Ethan's heart pounded. He was trapped. No weapons. No way out. And then the slaver grinned wider. Xeraxians don't save their own, he sneered. Do you think they'll come for you? Ethan's stomach sank. Vyra had warned him. If he left, he was no longer her responsibility. No one was coming for him. Back on the Exile, Vyra sat in silence in her quarters, staring at the empty void of space. She should have been relieved that the human was gone. Instead, there was an emptiness she didn't understand. She had given him a choice, and he had chosen to leave her. A sharp beep interrupted her thoughts. A transmission. Vyra opened the screen. The image of a slaver's insignia flashed in front of her. Then, Ethan's face, bloodied and bruised. A deep voice sneered through the speakers. Is this yours, Captain? Vyra's hands clenched into fists. The slaver laughed. If you want him back, you'll have to pay. Vyra's golden eyes burned with fury. Her crew would not approve. Her people would call her a fool. But none of it mattered. She had claimed Ethan, and no one took what was hers. The rescue mission, the bridge of the Exile, was silent. Every Xeraxian officer stared at the screen displaying the slaver's message. Ethan was bound, blood trailing down his face, his expression bruised but defiant. The slaver's voice echoed through the ship. If you want him back, you'll have to pay. A cruel laugh followed before the transmission cut off, leaving nothing but static. Vyra's golden eyes burned with cold fury. No one spoke. Finally, Commander Zark broke the silence. This is not our concern, he said, folding his arms. The human chose to leave. He is no longer under your protection, Captain. Vyra's jaw tightened. He was right. Ethan had made his decision. He had walked away. She had no obligation to risk her crew for him. And yet, Vyra turned toward the screen again, staring at the last image of Ethan's face. Angry, defiant, afraid. Something inside her snapped. She turned to her crew. Prepare for battle. A ripple of shock ran through the officers. Captain, Zark's voice was filled with disbelief. We are going after him, Vyra said, her tone leaving no room for argument. Zark clenched his fists. This is madness. You would risk everything for a human. Vyra's gaze hardened. He is mine. And that was all that mattered. The hunt begins. The Exile moved through hyperspace, its engines roaring as Vyra pursued the slavers. The crew did not argue further. Her orders were law. But tension hung in the air. Vyra could feel it. The silent judgment, the questioning stares. To save a human was one thing, but to risk war for him, that was another. Zark approached her privately in the war room. You are putting the crew at risk, he said bluntly. Vyra didn't look away from the battle map. You doubt me. Zark exhaled. I doubt him. His voice was full of frustration. You think he would do the same for you? Would he risk his own kind for us? Vyra turned to face him fully. You don't understand humans, Zark. Zark's expression darkened. And you do. Vyra didn't answer, because she wasn't sure why she was doing this. All she knew was that the thought of Ethan rotting in chains, alone and abandoned, made her blood boil. She had claimed him, and she would not let anyone take him from her. Inside the slaver's fortress, Ethan's wrists ached from the restraints. He had lost count of how long he had been in the cell. Hours, maybe a full day. Time blurred when you were locked in darkness. The slavers had already tried to break him. They had beaten him, starved him, laughed at him. But Ethan refused to break. He knew what they wanted. They wanted him to beg, to give up hope. They wanted him to believe that no one was coming for him. But Ethan refused to believe that. Because a part of him, a stupid, reckless, hopeful part of him, believed in Vyra. Would she come for him? He didn't know. But if she did, he wasn't going to be useless. The slaver's plan. The cell door hissed open, and Ethan squinted against the sudden light. A massive cybernetic slaver stepped in, his mechanical limbs whirring with deadly precision. "Still alive, human?" The slaver sneered. Ethan coughed, disappointed. The slaver grinned. "Not yet, but I will be if your Zyraxian pet doesn't show up." Ethan's breath caught. So that was their plan. They weren't just holding him for ransom. They were baiting Vira. Ethan's stomach twisted. He had led her into a trap. And that meant she was coming. A flicker of hope and terror rushed through him. If Vira came, she'd be walking into an ambush. And Ethan refused to be the reason she got captured or killed. It was time to stop waiting for rescue. It was time to fight. The escape plan. Ethan had been studying the guards for hours. He knew their patrols, their weak spots, their routines. And more importantly, he knew how to exploit them. When the next guard entered his cell, Ethan pretended to be weak. He slumped forward, his breathing ragged. The guard, overconfident, stepped closer. That was his mistake. Ethan lunged, slamming his bound fists into the guard's throat. The alien staggered back, gasping for air. Ethan snatched the stolen keycard from his belt and unlocked his restraints. He had one chance. He wasn't going to waste it. Vira arrives. The Exile dropped out of hyperspace above the slaver's fortress. Vira wasted no time. "All weapons online," she commanded. "Prepare boarding teams." Zark hesitated. "We could just bombard them from orbit." Vira's eyes flashed. "No, I'm going down there myself." Zark's eyes widened. "That is insane." Vira ignored him. She was not sending soldiers to retrieve Ethan. She was going to get him herself. The final battle. Ethan ran through the corridors of the slaver's base, his stolen blaster clutched tightly in his hands. Alarms blared. The guards were hunting him. He turned a corner and froze. A squad of slavers stood between him and the exit. Ethan's stomach dropped. He was outnumbered. No way out. The slavers grinned, raising their weapons. Then, the ceiling exploded. A blur of blue and gold dropped into the room. Before Ethan could even process what was happening, the first slaver was dead. Vira moved like lightning. She tore through the slavers with ruthless precision, her energy blade slicing through armor like paper. Within seconds, the entire squad was gone. Ethan stared, breathless. Vira turned to him, her golden eyes blazing. "Took you long enough," Ethan muttered, his voice hoarse. Vira's lips curled into a rare smirk. "Ungrateful human." She grabbed his arm. "Let's go." Ethan didn't argue. He didn't need to. Vira had come for him, and together they fought their way back to freedom. Outcasts together. The Exile tore through hyperspace, leaving the slaver's base as a smoldering ruin. Ethan sat in the ship's medical bay, his body aching but alive. Vira had saved him. She shouldn't have. The weight of what she had done, what she had risked, hung between them. And now, everything had changed. The crew's silence. The ship's corridors were eerily quiet. The crew of the Exile was disciplined. They obeyed their captain's orders without question. But this was different. They all knew what Vira had done. She had risked her command, her ship, her reputation, for a human, a species beneath them. And now, the consequences would come for them all. Ethan could feel it. The way the warriors watched him, not with respect, but with resentment. The murmurs he wasn't supposed to hear. "He is not one of us. She chose him over the crew. She has made us weak." Ethan clenched his fists. He had never asked for this. But that didn't matter. To them, he was the reason their captain had betrayed their laws. And that made him the enemy. The captain's reckoning. Vira stood before the holographic council, her face void of expression. His Zyraxian high command loomed before her. 4 elder warriors, their faces carved from stone and judgment. They had demanded an explanation. Why had she defied orders? Why had she risked her ship for a human? Why had she dishonored their laws? Vyra did not flinch, because he was mine. The elders murmured among themselves. One of them, High Lord Kelrix, leaned forward. You know the price of such defiance. Vyra's voice was calm, but unyielding. I do. Kelrix's golden eyes narrowed. Then hear your sentence, Captain Vyra of the Exile. The room grew still. You are hereby stripped of your command. The Exile is no longer under your control. A murmur of shock ran through the officers gathered behind Vyra. Ethan felt his chest tighten. They were taking everything from her. But Kelrix wasn't done. You are exiled from our empire. You will be hunted if you return. You are no longer Zyraxian. The words landed like a killing blow. Ethan saw Vyra's jaw clench, but her eyes remained steady. She had expected this, and still, she had saved him. Do you understand your punishment? Kel, Rix asked. Vyra's voice was quiet, but firm. I accept it. The walk of the exiled. As Vyra walked through the ship, her crew watched in silence. Not a single warrior spoke. She had been their captain, their leader. And now, she was nothing. Ethan walked beside her, ignoring the glares, the whispers. He could feel the rage and betrayal in the air. The crew had lost their captain. Because of him. They reached the docking bay. A single shuttle had been left for them, a ship barely big enough for two. Their only means of escape. Vyra didn't hesitate. She stepped inside, her posture unchanged. But as Ethan followed, one voice finally spoke. It was Zark. His expression was filled with fury. You were a warrior, he said. Now you are nothing. Vyra didn't answer. She just closed the shuttle door. The engines roared to life, and the small vessel left the only home she had ever known. Nowhere to go. Silence filled the cockpit. Ethan sat across from Vyra, watching her. Her face was unreadable, her golden eyes staring at the void of space. He cleared his throat. So, what now? Vyra exhaled slowly. We find a place to land. Any ideas? Vyra's lips twitched slightly. None. Ethan leaned back in his seat. Great. Exiled warriors with no plan. Love it. A long pause. Then, finally, why did you come for me? He asked. Vyra didn't look at him. You already know why. Ethan swallowed. Because she had claimed him. Because in her culture, he was hers. He wanted to say he didn't ask for this, that she should have let him go. But when he looked at her, alone, abandoned by her own people because of him, he realized something. He didn't regret it, because if their positions were reversed, he would have done the same for her. He sighed. So, how does Exile work? Do we get a membership card, special discounts? Vyra finally turned toward him, and for the first time since their escape, she smiled. The final decision. The shuttle drifted through the cold void of space, a tiny speck against an endless ocean of stars. Ethan sat in the co-pilot's seat, staring at the navigation console. Nowhere to go, no one to call. They were alone. Exiles. He stole a glance at Vyra, who sat silently beside him, her golden eyes fixed on the stars. She hadn't spoken much since they left the Exile. It made sense. She had lost everything. Her ship, her crew, her title. Ethan wanted to say something, anything, but the weight of their situation pressed down on them both. Finally, the silence was broken. Vyra's voice was calm, steady. We need a plan. Ethan huffed out a small laugh. Welcome to the club. I've been trying to figure that out since I got here. Vyra's lips twitched, almost a smile. But it didn't reach her eyes. Where do humans go when they have lost everything? She asked. Ethan hesitated. We rebuild. Vyra studied him. Then that is what we will do. The hunt begins. The Zyraxians were notorious for hunting traitors. Vyra knew that the moment she defied their laws to save Ethan, her fate had been sealed. The High Command would not let her go unpunished. And that meant they were being hunted. Ethan checked the long-range scanners. "We've got company." Vyra leaned over his shoulder, her sharp eyes narrowing as she scanned the data. A Zyraxian warship, fast, deadly, headed straight for them. Ethan cursed under his breath. "They don't waste time, huh?" Vyra's jaw tightened. "They never do." He turned to her. "So, do we fight?" Vyra exhaled. "Not yet." Ethan frowned. "Wait, you're not thinking about running, are you?" Vyra tilted her head. "Is that a problem?" Ethan scoffed. "It's just, I didn't take you for the running type." Vyra's golden eyes flashed. "I am not running." She tapped the navigation console. "I am choosing the battlefield." Ethan blinked. "Oh, well, that sounds way cooler." The trap. The plan was simple. Lure the Zyraxian hunters into a battlefield of their own making. Vyra piloted the shuttle toward an asteroid field, weaving between the tumbling chunks of rock and ice with deadly precision. The Zyraxian warship followed. Ethan clenched his teeth. "They're gaining on us." Vyra's hands moved over the controls without hesitation. "They think I am desperate," she said. "They think I am weak." Ethan smirked. "They clearly haven't met you." Vyra ignored him, her focus sharp. "Arm the forward cannons." Ethan blinked. "Wait, we have forward cannons." Vyra gave him a look. "Of course." Ethan grinned. "I'm starting to like this ship." The Zyraxian warship closed in. They had them. Or at least, they thought they did. Vyra suddenly cut all power to the shuttle. For a moment, the small craft went dead, drifting lifelessly among the asteroids. The Zyraxians hesitated, confused. And in that single second of hesitation, Vyra struck. She reactivated the engines at full power, spinning the shuttle around in a sharp maneuver that sent them directly behind the Zyraxian ship. Before they could react, Ethan fired both forward cannons. A direct hit. The Zyraxian ship veered wildly, its shields flickering. Vyra didn't hesitate. Again. Ethan fired. Again. And again. The enemy ship exploded in a burst of flame and shattered metal. Silence. Ethan exhaled. "Holy shit." Vyra sat back, unshaken. "Effective." Ethan looked at her in disbelief. We just." He gestured toward the debris outside. Vyra arched a brow. "Would you have preferred to die?" Ethan chuckled, running a hand through his hair. "No, that was kind of awesome." Vyra gave him a rare smirk. "I know. A new beginning." For the first time since their escape, Vyra allowed herself to breathe. They had won. But it wasn't over. Ethan studied her carefully. "They'll keep coming, won't they?" Vyra nodded. "Yes." Ethan leaned back in his seat. "So what do we do?" Vyra was silent for a long moment. Then she turned to him, her golden eyes steady. "We build something new." Ethan frowned. "Like what?" Vyra's voice was soft, but filled with unshakable determination. "A home." Ethan stared at her. For the first time, it hit him. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This wasn't about running, hiding, or waiting for death. Vyra had lost her people. He had lost his own. And now, they had each other. A slow grin spread across Ethan's face. "Well," he said, stretching out his arms, "I hope you like working with humans, Captain." Vyra's eyes glowed. "I think I will manage." The ship sped into the unknown, two exiles forging a new path together. Because sometimes the strongest bonds were made not by blood, not by duty, but by choice.